If we time traveled back to Rafi 5 years ago, just pick a date, whatever, right? We went back 5 years ago and we said, "Hey, man, you're going to talk to some private equity people here in a couple years. Are there things that like you now know that you would have like told 5 year younger Rafi to do to get in place way before you
Oh,
ever
for
even
sure. Yeah, yeah,
yeah?
yeah. I
What does
think
that look like?
so. Some of it, and I kind of like came upon this in happenstance, this big one that I kind of realized. So there's like, obviously there's like what is attractive to a buyer, but then there's all this like financial and tax obligations that happen to the seller as well, right? Like whether it's an asset sale versus a stock sale and what gets written off, what doesn't get written off and all of that. One of the things that we did, and it was really because it was more of I saw the business opportunity, but it was also like a passion project. I was a consultant for the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities here in Georgia. This is gonna be a long way of getting to what I'm talking about here, but they basically, in order to see patients that are being served under that have those kind of needs, adults with developmental disabilities, you need to like become this waiver provider. Becoming a waiver provider in Georgia is totally, I knew who to call because I was a consultant. Like I knew the people in the governor's office and at the department and at the, like I knew the people to call. And it still took Proactive, the business that I run, 4 years to become a provider. And these provider numbers are like, once you have them, you're pretty good. But it takes 4 years if you know who to call to get one, right? And there's, I think, three registered providers in the state of Georgia. I think there's something like 36,000 patients that are on a wait list for services. So like you can start putting the pieces together like this. If you're a provider, there's some upside, a potential upside there and a giant moat, right? And I was doing this kind of just because I was a consultant with this group before I bought the business, and I was like, well, I'll have a clinic. It just makes it makes sense. I've got the skill set. It's something that was kind of like an emerging area of practice, so we could probably attract some future staff and team members that wanted to work in this field. There were a lot of positives to it, and I didn't really think at all about the long-term strategic implications of that. But what it means is that if we sell this business down the line, because the TIN number is associated with this provider number, an asset sale won't cut it for whoever buys this business, right? So that automatically puts you in a different type of category of sale. And I'm not a genius when it comes to the taxes and what that means. But when I mentioned that to my accountant the other day, I was talking to him. He's like, he got all excited about like what that meant for me in the write-offs and like how it was going to be a beneficial sale for me as the owner if we were to sell to this organization, right? So I think if I had known that 5 years ago, I would have just been thinking about what can I do in the business that makes the actual entity itself valuable so that it gets purchased as a stock sale rather than an asset sale. Like when I bought the business, there was really nothing to it. I was buying the goodwill and the equipment and the patient list, right? And that's what most people are selling in a physical therapy
Those are the
business.
assets. Yeah.
Yeah, those are
Yep.
the assets of the business. But if there's a way that you can sell the actual entity itself, again, I'm not a tax person, but apparently there are tax benefits for you down the line as far as like what can get written off, what gets, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's also a reason why a lot of buyers want asset purchases versus stock options, right? And again, not a tax person, really don't know all the ins and outs. I was just talking to my accountant last week about this and he was like getting excited. So I've kind of figured there's something there to it. So I would probably, like, I'm learning this right now in real time. 5 years ago, I would have like really tried to take a dive into that and like, what does that mean? What do I have to do? What are the pieces that need to be put in place? Yada, yada, yada. All of that kind of like really grow a really deep understanding of like the types of transactions that are possible. What are the implications for each of those transactions? Understanding terms is huge. Like you talk about, somebody selling the business is the first transaction they're going to do, or getting an investment is like the first big transaction, the only real transaction they're ever going to do in their life.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I bought a business without knowing half of this stuff. So it was
That's right. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
It
could
turned
write
out
a
okay.
book on
Yeah.
I could write a book now, like, holy cow, looking back at that transaction, like there were so many levers I could have pulled. There were so many things that I should have put on terms that I didn't. There were just like I just didn't know, and it was a small deal. It was not a big deal. I tell people like I bought the business for less than I owed on my house, right? Like it was not a massive multi-million-dollar investment, but having gone through that once, being on my side now, thinking about maybe selling it or what it would look like there are pieces in place that I'm aware of, like even just like cash in the bank and what happens with accounts receivable and stuff like that. Like it's huge.
If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and RCM works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.